A crisis is underway in India where the citizenship of millions of people could be at risk. The country's Hindu majority government appears to be cracking down on Muslims in the northeast Indian state of Assam. India has launched a campaign to list all legal residents living there. 4 million people, mostly Muslims, were left off that list. They have until next Friday to prove they are citizens or they'll be labeled illegal immigrants. A New York Times article titled "India Plans Big Detention Camps for Migrants, Muslims Are Afraid" takes a closer look at the looming crisis. New York Times South Asia Bureau Chief Jeffrey Gettleman co-wrote that article. He's with me now from New Delhi. Jeffrey, thanks for joining us. This story appears to be similar to situations we've seen with the Rohingya in Myanmar and the Uyghurs in China. Now in India, a lot of the Muslims being targeted were born there and, as we mentioned, have been living there for decades. Why is the government questioning their citizenship now?
Well, what's really surprising is India is not Myanmar and it's not China. It celebrates itself as one of the largest democracies in the world, a place with strong democratic institutions, protections for minorities, a multicultural, tolerant, secular country. And what we're seeing in the Northeast is a campaign to question the citizenship of millions of people. And the suspicion is this is driven by a religious agenda, that the majority of India is Hindu. Right now, the country is controlled by a Hindu nationalist government that believes strongly in a Hindu identity of India. And the fear is they are going after minorities, especially Muslims, trying to disenfranchise them of the most fundamental right, which is your right to citizenship. And if you lose that, you have no other rights. You become stateless. You have no protections under the law. And that's the pressing fear right now in this part of India. And an additional worry is that this may just be the beginning, and that this campaign in a part of India that not many people have heard of, Assam, is going to be carried out through the rest of the country.
And it's not the only thing of that nature. In your article, you also highlight the situation in Kashmir, which is also a Muslim majority state. So why are Muslims seen as such a threat to the Indian government right now?
Well, this is like the big issue right now in India, and it's causing a lot of fear and a lot of turbulence. India is 80% Hindu. It is predominantly Hindu, vastly Hindu. It's always had an identity to some degree as a Hindu nation. Yet, there's 20% of the population or 50% of the population are Muslims. India has one of the largest Muslim populations anywhere in the world. And there's been this tension over time in India between Hindus and Muslims, the majority versus the minority. And what we've seen in the last few years is the rise of a very strong, passionate Hindu nationalist movement that often expresses itself quite brutally towards Muslims. There's been lynchings of Muslims for all kinds of offenses against Hinduism. There have been Muslims excluded from politics. There's a real fear that India's taken a direction that's going to exclude Muslims from public life. And what we're seeing in Kashmir, which was the only part of India that was Muslim majority, in the last couple of weeks, the government has changed that and is trying to revoke the statehood of Kashmir, revoke its autonomy that it's had for a long time. Kashmir had this special status within India that it was allowed to make some of its own laws. And the fact that you're having these two things happen in different corners of India at the same time are just adding to the fears and perception that the government in power, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is discriminatory towards Muslims.
Yeah, they might be a minority, but you're still talking, something like 200 million people. So, Jeffrey, how are people in Assam and Muslims across the country reacting? Are most of them able to easily prove their citizenship?
That's a really good question. It's caused a lot of fear. People are worried that they're not going to be treated fairly from this government. So in the citizenship exercise, it's kind of like what happens in the States when there's a roundup of, suspected illegal aliens. People are struggling for documents to prove that they are Indian. They have been in this country a long time. Their family members are Indian. But what's different is a lot of people in India don't have a lot of documents. They come from poor villages, totally cut off, remote areas. Some of them are hit by mammoth floods right now. And they don't have a piece of paper that shows who they are, where they were born, when they were born, any of those things. And then if that's the case, they might be excluded from these citizenship lists and lose all their rights.
So once August 31st rolls around, what's India's plan for these 4 million people if they are declared illegal immigrants?
Nobody knows. And that's a big, big question, because there's no capacity in India right now to detain 4 million people. They have a few thousand people in detention camps, and already that's proven to be a problem. So what are they going to do if they find 4 million people stateless? Where are they going to put them? How are they going to try to deport them or treat them or hear appeals or some type of judicial process pertaining to these people? We really don't know. Probably those 4 million people, a large part, are going to pass these citizenship tests and make it through, but there's going to be some that are left behind, and we have not gotten any clear answers of what lies ahead for them.
Will the courts offer any remedy, do you think?
Right now, that's a big question. India's institutions are being tested because there's a very powerful and popular central government that has extended itself throughout many layers of the government. The courts traditionally are pretty independent. They stand up to the government, they reverse decisions the government's made, but the pressure is increasing. And so far, the courts have not sided with these people whose citizenship is threatened. Maybe that'll change.
We only have a few seconds left, Jeffrey, but what's been the international response?
Not much. Not much. The international community, the big Western powers, want to do business in India. They value India as a partner. And it's been pretty quiet as far as criticism for any of these policies.
Taking it as internal politics, probably. All right. Jeffrey Gettleman, thank you so much for your work.
My pleasure.